It is with great pleasure that I'm showcasing the next iterative step in the process of launching towards our symposium launch of GDHR in a formal sense in October. Thank you very much, Steve. As you can tell, we've croaked today. The GDHR website and, in fact, the GDHR resources have been around since early 2000s and have been a solid resource to support teachers in Western Australia and then more broadly across Australia and are accessed internationally now through the original curriculum support materials, which you can see up there on the right, which Megan and I went to the Healthy Schools Forum last week, and we still get asked about, well, are these available in print form? So they have evolved somewhat significantly since then, and there's many people in the room that have been involved in that process. But and in fact, I will talk about just acknowledging those people. So in the support and the rewrite of the current website, so Lisa Bastian, who's a very strong supporter, Mary Rose Baker, who's coming up from long service leave, Steve Fragamini, Megan Roberts, Dr. Laurel Mabry, who's at the Department of Sexuality at Curtin University. I don't think Laurel's here. Tricia Lee and Kim Shute, who've been doing some curriculum writing, and Trina Robinson, who works for our technology partner, Permience, and the Department of Education statewide services, who've also provided some input along the way. So the journey of GDHR has come to now. We had a soft launch in March of this year where we released the site with about 30 activities, learning activities. There's been a significant rewrite which began in 2012 to 2013, where there was a review of the old site, so the old green site that you would have seen up there, and excuse me, and that was in line with the release of the Australian curriculum version 1. We're now, as of today, when I downloaded it and had a look, it's at version 7.5. So that has been one of the roadblocks, or things that have happened along the way that have actually caused this to take such a long journey along the way. So the consultation began back in 2012, 2013 with some external reference groups. These were, there was an interstate group, there was local groups, there were state representatives, there were state education representatives, health, etc. And it was quite an extensive process. But during that time, with the curriculum, the Australian curriculum versions changing, it did cause there to be some ultimately significant delays. The website at that time, that was the platform itself, was almost falling over, as we like to say, but it actually almost was. So there was a significant need to retain the resource and build a new platform, a technology platform that was going to be solid and be able to take GDHR through to the next, contemporary phase. So there was a process of engaging curriculum writers, and that then involved a workflow process, which has now formed a strong quality control review process, which includes an academic expert, who is Laurel Mabry, Dr. Laurel Mabry. And we also started, once we had the learning activities that were going to be published, formed strong tertiary and sector partnerships. So the technology and content migration can't kind of be undersold in this journey because it was a new portal that was developed. It wasn't a static website that was just a series of pages. It has the capacity to be more than just a website, and to engage with lots of other groups around GDHR, and also for it to be hosted locally, which it hadn't been at that stage. So the new website is mobile, tablet and desktop compatible. There's little screenshots of what happens when it resizes down to those devices. And we also looked at the way that the site was built was about creating related content that can be discovered from multiple entry points, and what that means I'll show you a little bit later through the presentation. One of the other significant changes that had to happen so that resources could be found, so that they could be categorised correctly, so that they could be discovered was that it would be categorised and the metadata applied to a group called ESA, which is the Education Services Australia, which ultimately is where teachers will go as a central repository to find and locate resources that are relevant to them. And so if content is categorised appropriately, then it will be discovered, it will come up and be found, and then hopefully they'll come to GDHR that way, as well as by word of mouth or by return visits, etc. At this time, about 12 months ago, the WA curriculum and assessment outline was drafted, which is really the WA curriculum version of the Australian curriculum. So instead of having a national curriculum, which is the Australian curriculum, each state has, to a degree, modified the Australian curriculum to suit their own state needs. And so this has had another impact because we've had quite lengthy discussions with SCASA, who are the school's curriculum assessment body in WA that basically dictates what happens with the curriculum in state schools and Catholic schools and independent schools. That process meant that they were giving us very strong recommendations that codes and anything that might provide identifiers to a curriculum that they hadn't actually endorsed as yet, that we hold off from that. So the beauty, I guess, of the technology aspect is that although behind the scenes, and I've got somewhere else behind the scenes, all of this has been done, but it hasn't yet been published so that the person who goes to that page can see it. There was a significant content migration and cleanup process, and although I think it was very much initially underestimated how long that would take, and I know that Mary Rose was leading the charge in coordinating the review of the background notes and other content that was on the existing site, whilst in parallel the learning activities were being updated. So this is I've kind of taken screenshots just in case we didn't get connectivity today. This is the new website, which is quite a different look and feel to the old. I'm just going to give you a quick walk through the different tabs in the site. So there's the guide section, the learning, resources and questions. So in the guide section, as a teacher myself, I know the importance of having a really good lesson, a learning activity, lesson plan, whatever you want to call it, to guide you in how you're going to prepare to teach areas in the curriculum that are potentially not your forte or are, and you want to adapt or modify, etc. But one of the things that I realised when I became involved in this project was the importance and the depth of quality of information that is available in the guides. And that's evolved quite significantly over the last 12 months to be more than just background notes and some teaching notes, which were very of a high quality in the original resource. So in the guide section, you've got information about teaching sexuality education, what to teach, and background notes. So the teaching sexuality education really unpacks for the teacher why you have to do this. Why is it? It's in the curriculum. It's part of what we're mandated to do as part of our partnerships with state, national, international organisations, and it's really providing teachers with a solid reason as to why they would need to teach sexual and relationships education. The other important aspect that we really added to recently was the exploring the values. So this, which I'm sure all of you, and I don't really know all your backgrounds, but if you think about yourself as a person and then imagine yourself as a teacher in a classroom, what do you think that you might bring to that role and then ultimately influence young people in your classroom? So it's really important for the teacher to really examine what they believe and then what they're required to make sure that they facilitate and enable to happen in terms of knowledge and understanding of young people around sexuality and relationships education, but then, you know, how they can manage their own influences on that. Resilience and life skills absolutely cannot be undersold. So there's a lot of information in there about strengthening a sense of self and building skills to manage healthier relationships. And I don't think there's ever been a more important time in terms of contemporising the materials for what's happening with young people today. The Health Promoting Schools framework remains a really solid foundation and has a strong relationship with GDHR. And of course, the most important thing is where knowledge and understanding really starts, and a lot of the values of our young people begin is with parents, carers and guardians. So in the guides is also the what to teach. So for those that know the old site, this is around the teaching notes aspect. So this is about making sure that when a teacher is setting up that scene to begin, before they get started, which is how we term it in the learning activities, what are they going to do to make sure that there's a really safe environment for young people to explore all of the content and potentially tricky situations or outcomes and discussions, etc. So establishing ground rules, this is a great one for adults and for children. Question box is a great activity that's been around since the beginning of the resource and is in there again. Information about discrimination and actually the law and what teachers need to know about discrimination. Protective interrupting. So we as in GDHR haven't elaborated to a great degree on protective interrupting because this is dealt really adequately by the Department of Education in this case, which is where we link to provide that up-to-date information. Dealing with disclosures, so supporting teachers in what to do, what they're required to do by law if they have a disclosure in the classroom, and then the curriculum links, which, from a teaching point of view, I would have to say is probably at this stage in the journey of GDHR is poor. Is because we're still in a state of flux, which is increasingly frustrating for the GDHR team because we just can't name it and say this is exactly what the WA curriculum is and this is what teachers need to know. And if we align with the Australian curriculum, it's potentially doing a lot of work that's unnecessary at this stage. So I think that there's a lot of credibility still in the content and the resources. They give teachers enough. They are professionals. They can make professional judgments and they'll make those connections as they stand at the moment. So in regards to the background notes, there's 24 at the moment, and there's an example of some of those. I've highlighted body image because the analytics tell us that body image continues to be one of the most searched for terms, the highest landing page in the site, and also those activities that relate to body image. So one of the things that one of the things that the site enables teachers to do, depending on their entry point to the site, is if they find the body image page, then they will also see that there's a related activity that they can go to about that, and that's the synergy of the site where you can come at multiple entry points that I talked about earlier. The other, obviously, in contemporising the content and updating the information for teachers, young people and accessibility and influence of pornography was a new background note that was written, and also there was a much more bigger focus given to social media. There's 40 plus learning activities which can be selected by topic, and this is a GDHR topic. This is not an ACARA Australian curriculum topic. This is not somebody else's topic. This is a process that was undertaken by the team, the content experts, the academic team as well, in identifying, based on what the previous site and the learning activities identified as common themes, as well as what the research says, as well as what is going to be a really quick and easy way for teachers to go, okay, I'm not just looking for it by year, but I'm also going to be wanting to select by topic. And I have a feeling, because I wasn't able to print out my handout, I think I've written down that Staying Safe was one of the most was one of the highest landing pages for when teachers were going into the site to find select a topic. Changes available in real time. So there's also year level that you can go to, which I'll show you, which is K to 10 at the moment. We're currently waiting for some new kindergarten resources to be provided to us, and they are going to be aligned not with the Australian curriculum, because one of the changes that the Australian curriculum, the differences between the WA and the Australian curriculum is that the Australian curriculum is organised by bands, so they'll put together year 1 and 2, 3 and 4, so it's band 2 and 3, for example. But kindergartens kind of sits outside of that with WA, so we're aligning that to the early years framework with WA's curriculum. Changes available in real time. This means that in the old site, one of the things that was limiting and needed to be changed so that the GDHR team could manage those changes themselves was that rather than, and you'll see a wealth of resources available, and they're in PDF downloadable, normally desktop published format. In GDHR, if we go in and make a change, then what the teacher downloads, and it's fully accessible, so that it means that there's got to be PDF and Word versions available. When a teacher downloads the learning activities, they're downloading it at that version at that point in time, which is a really powerful adaptation to the site. It means that we're not having to, have a bulk release, or we've got to, publish, pay for external people to make those changes, etc. There's also a single screen view, which I'll show you in a moment, and you can also access quick links from the learning activities. This is the view from when you select a topic, and this is the view that you would get if you were selecting by year. So you can see over here on the right-hand side that there's also the parallel to, well, what are the topics? And if for some of them, as they are cross-categorised, so they actually belong in, staying safe and growing bodies, for example, then it would show up on the right-hand side there. The idea of this is just to give teachers a bit of a snapshot, a short description as to what they would, that looks like an activity that I want to do. So the lesson template, so to speak, is by year level description, learning focus. So the learning focus is really what the key, this is for the teacher to guide the teacher as to what the learning should be, focused on. The key understandings. In the ideal world, these would have also had a correlation with assessment tasks, but at this point in time, again, on advice from the curriculum authorities, was that the assessment tasks were not included, because then teachers would be, if we're aligning it to a code, we're aligning it to an assessment task, then it's kind of, I guess it's a decision that we went with and we endorsed for a period of time. Because obviously it's an assessment and curriculum outline that the WA curriculum will have, which then kind of is about assessment and reporting, which is, all important to that curriculum authority. But it's not to say that this is not an easy thing to add in. We can do it at any time. So this is what I mean by real time, is that if this was in the website, then this is what the teacher would print off. So this shows you the description, learning focus, all those key headings, and then this on the very right hand side, on the fourth page of this particular learning activity. This shows you where there would be, it's really that on the right-hand side there where you can see the related items. So we're constantly, when we're publishing, we're categorising, so to make sure that, and we're relating assets in the terminology of the website, but relating items that can be found easily. Excuse me. Okay, so under the hood, it's categorised. I've talked about this already. These are the Australian curriculum, health and physical education requirements, and I've got because there's so much more. There's focus areas, there's information that when we syndicate with ESA, which is what the next slide is about, is that it will just happen by magic. Once we get the proper files and that's all up to date, and this is part of the future work, is that we connect with ESA, which is Scoodle, which is this little, if any of your teachers or you work with schools, the Scoodle community is awesome. Place a repository for finding resources that are relevant to your area. And so this is part of the importance in making sure that this is a well-regarded resource and endorsed. The resources is another tab or page that, you know, in the website terminology. This is also in the access information. I think it's WA agencies is one of the top 10 pages that are you know, consistently being accessed. So that's an awesome validation for the team that making sure that these were organised. You can see over there where you may be able to see where it says guidelines and Western Australia is highlighted. So where relevant, they were organised by location to make it easier for teachers, because ultimately that's what we want to do. The questions, there's FAQs, which about GDHR really was so that we supported teachers from the transition from the old site to the new. For those teachers that were thinking, but I really, really loved that old activity and I want to be able to access it during that transition, this will probably be around for about another couple of months. But they are able to download the old activities for a short period during this period of time. Teachers, these are also questions that teachers in schools ask, students ask and parents ask, and again these can be linked back to the other resources in the site. Anyone can also ask a question. We've also, and the last tab page, or last tab, is about searching. So another aspect of the website that's which is great is that teachers can or users can go there. They can search for content type. They can search for a keyword. They'll find all of these different search results identified, and then they'll have the number of results. So this is basically showing us that there are, whatever I searched for, gender, say, there are 2 learning activities in Year 9, 1 in 10. And so again, this is what's behind under the hood. So how we categorise, the metadata we apply is really critical to how it's being found. So it's really an important part of the content management of the site. So lastly, what's next? So there's going to be an impact evaluation proposed for looking beyond the anecdotal teacher feedback, which has been very positive in this initial phase. We're going to look at targeted campaigns to increase access and usage. I've talked about the ESA syndication, which is a really critical part about it being found. We have new activities planned and are currently being written. And also there's some work across the program where we're looking at broadening this to, you know, potentially in the future, strategies for targeting Aboriginal students, so for supporting those teachers that are in remote areas that have actually been they've asked for this recently. So we're hoping that will happen, and called students, and also we're going to have a big focus, which at the moment there isn't much of, the media and health literacy, which is a really important new aspect to the Australian curriculum. We're looking at obviously strengthening our education, and in particular the tertiary and research partnerships, looking at formalising those communities' practice and what that means. And then in October there'll be a school-based sexuality relationships education symposium, which GDHR will be showcased at again, but it will be more of an opportunity for it to reach schools. We're going to have a teacher that's going to be presenting how they've actually used it practically in the classroom. We absolutely welcome your feedback, comments and questions, and you can email the team, you can go online, or you can chat to me and I'll just nod and make nice noises at morning tea because my throat's now sore. But yeah, thank you very much for being such welcoming faces, and I think we've got opportunity for a couple of questions.